Hello everyone and welcome to the Legacy Star City Games IQ from sunny Doncaster. We have James Corwood on the left playing Blue White Miracles and John Ingham on the right who is playing Bug Delver. I'm here with our resident expert on Legacy, Lee Houldsworth.
Expert might be a bit of a push, but I'll do my best.
Well, you know more than we do. And hopefully we're going to have a quite interesting match between these two. How do you see this match going, Lee?
Well, it all depends on basically whether James can land a very early counterbalance through John's permission. It's not exactly an ideal start for John with no one drop, but James is off to a good one with top into second land being a fetch land.
Yeah, is that basically what he's looking to do in this match? Just sit on either counterballs or top and just try and improve his library?
Yeah, basically he's just going to spend a lot of time looking at those top three cards. Then he'll reshuffle if he doesn't like them, and then he'll look at top three cards again. So when you're getting to see, three cards at least a turn, you can improve your quality quite a lot. And then once he does have the counterbalance in play, John's going to have a hard time resolving anything as his deck's basically ones, twos and threes.
Okay. That looks like a turn 2 Nimble Mongoose there from John.
Yep, that's not ideal, but if it does stick, it is very good versus the Miracles deck. They've basically just got Terminus, and I believe they do play Singleton Supreme Verdict nowadays.
Yeah. Now, the Bug Delver deck, a bit of a derivative of the Rug Delver deck, which has been so popular in Legacy for so long. How do you see the match being different from James's standpoint playing Blue White Miracles? Would you change a huge amount about how you'd approach the matchup?
Basically, you can't rely on your counterbalance locking the Delver deck out of the game because they do have access to Abrupt Decay, and there's not much you can actually do about that.
We noticed one of the cards there, Stifle, that's very important to the Bug Delver deck, and there's been quite a lot of argument in the past about Stifle as a card in the Delver decks. What's your opinion on how it's gone?
If you're not playing it, you're wrong. That's what I think. It's like it keeps all your daisies relevant into the late game, and it's not just as some people leave it doing fetch lands. Like for example, in this matchup, he can stifle a top draw. If James goes to draw with the top, John can stifle it and perhaps protect a one drop he's trying to resolve if there is a counterbalance on the table.
Okay. One thing that I did notice about the Miracles deck is that it seems to be a deck with a fairly high amount of basic lands. We see a Wasteland from John there. It seems like the Miracles deck is a little bit more resistant to Wasteland than, say, your average deck in Legacy maybe.
Yeah, it's one of the main points that is a good selling point for the Blue White Miracles deck. It basically wants to hit land drops 1 to 4 every game without being disrupted. So it can cast Jace the Mind Sculptor or just basically sculpt its hand more with top and make spells.
It looks like James has been a little bit choked because of that Stifle from John, and John's just put a Liliana on the table, which is probably about as bad as it gets for the Blue White Miracles deck overall.
Yeah, it's gonna. He will still, as long as he can make his land drops to stop, top will still keep him in the game. But once that starts eating away at his hand, it's gonna really hurt.
And James decides it's worth fighting over and forces, but John comes and right back with a forcible of his own.
I think that's a favourable exchange for the bug deck if now the Liliana does resolve.
It looks like it is going to. There's no Spell Pierce or anything coming back from James. Although, would a Miracles deck be playing Spell Pierce main deck?
It might have 1 or 2 copies main deck. It depends if he's playing Snapcaster Mage, really, because it's a very good spell with Snapcaster Mage. The thing is about this point of the match, John's happy to trade spells 1 for 1, because it will just power up his Mongoose.
Yeah, and James's only way of dealing with Mongoose is Terminus.
And he's probably got at least 1 Supreme Verdict. The thing is with Terminus, again going back to John's Stifles, he can stifle the Miracle Trigger, so he would have to pay the full 6.
Which isn't really happening very often in Legacy.
Not very often.
That's the swords going away for James and a daze going away for John off the Liliana.
I'm not sure what John's final card in hand is, because Daze does seem quite relevant here until James makes his 3rd land drop. I expect it to be another threat or maybe an Abrupt Decay.
Yeah. Can't really see... Looks like James is being fairly stifled here, to tell you the truth. One thing I have noticed, that Bayou from John Ingham's got a rather nice altar on it.
Yeah, it is a furry, despite what else it may look like.
John has got a fairly, shall we say, pimped out bug delver deck.
Yeah, he's been working on his bug cards for about 3 years. He used to play bug standstill as well. I'm not sure what James used to play in Legacy. I'm not very familiar with him.
I think that I'm pretty sure when we spoke to James, he said it had been a while since he played Legacy. So, if it had been, would Miracles be a deck that you'd suggest to someone at that point, or?
Depends how quickly he, in general, plays control decks, and how good he is with stacking his triggers correctly, because it can get quite convoluted, the stack, with your multiple counterbalance triggers. And then you're activating the top multiple times, and your opponent's responding multiple times.
Yeah. So, if you were going to give advice to someone who might be looking to get into Legacy, aside from the cost of getting into Legacy, if we were saying that cost wasn't an issue, what sort of decks would you recommend to someone who's just coming into Legacy, do you think?
Basically, Legacy is a format where you can basically play whatever deck you want as long as you play it very well. The good decks to come in at the minute is not these kind of tempo or control decks. You probably want something more aggressive or something more just that has inherent power, like the show and tell decks, Reanimator, maybe like Goblins.
Although, having said that, though, when I've come across the Goblin deck, there's certainly an awful lot of room for play in the Goblin deck as well.
Yeah, it's still a lot of very linear lines that you will be doing with the deck. It's not something that's going to produce convoluted stacks. The combat can get quite interesting, and Sharpshooter as well. But it's definitely something, it's a deck that if you pick up and play for a long time, you can get a lot out of it.
Okay, that's Lily ticking up to 6 now from John. It looks like James is going to brainstorm in response to the ability.
It's obviously an important card in his hand he probably wants to put back on top. I'm not sure brainstorm is correct. I'd maybe just discard the brainstorm, unless he does have the miracle in his hand.
I mean, it's been a point of a lot of contention, shall we say, for Legacy for a while in how to correctly brainstorm, hasn't it?
Yeah, generally you want to only brainstorm when you need to improve your hand, and only if you have a fetch land to shuffle the things you do not need away.
And it looks like James discards a Caracas there. And end of turn he's going to Enlighten Tutor.
So he did have a shuffle effect, which is quite good. I'm not sure what he's going to get here. It could be Ensnaring Bridge. I don't know whether they'll list play it anymore, but that would certainly slow down his Mongoose.
Would he potentially get a counterbalance in this situation, or is that just not going to help him?
He's on 14, but John's had that same card in hand for a long time, so he has to assume at this point it's Abrupt Decay. So he's going for Detention Sphere to deal with the Liliana, which seems like a reasonable thing. He can cast it, he just has to hope John doesn't have days. And if he does have Abrupt Decay and blows up the Detention Sphere, then I don't think he's too unhappy, because he can then try and set up Counterbalance and hopefully be on enough line to stabilise.
Yeah. And at least the Liliana then will be back on 3 and not threatening to ultimate and take out half your board.
Yeah, I don't think John would ultimate Liliana at this point, though. It's much more potent as just each of them discarding a card every turn.
Yeah. And it looks like it's going to resolve. But Lee's going to be very pleased with himself at this point. So there you go. That is Abrupt Decay that he.
So James is looking to basically draw a Counterbalance now. To draw a Counterbalance followed by some Terminus.
That Abrupt Decay also gave John Threshold, so the Nimble Mongoose is now taking 3-point life chunks out of James's life total. So it's got him on a bit of a more rush clock, but John doesn't have much as backup if James does clear the board here.
There's been many games in Legacy that's been won by a single Mongoose, though. He is quite a sturdy threat.
Yeah. Would the Miracles deck also potentially have access to something like Engineered Explosives Academy Ruins?
Some of them have been leaning towards that. James may also have Vendilion Clique in his hand, where he's looking to maybe ambush the Mongoose, but John using the Liliana before attacks means he's protected himself from running his only threat into that trick.
And James is going to use his top and just have a look and see what's going on at this point.
So yeah, no, John's quite happy to attack as long as the Terminus doesn't happen here anyway.
This is one of the I would say one of the unfortunate parts about Top and the fact that one of the reasons it got banned in the old extended format is that it just seems to be taking, every single turn takes 20, 30 seconds here, and he's just topping constantly.
Yeah, he's just using Brainstorm to pick something up there. I'm not sure why he cast Brainstorm at that point.
Again, maybe because he had, well, if Brainstorm's the only card in your hand at that point, do you just discard it, or do you fire it off and hope to stack the top of your deck?
You're hoping to maybe stack the Miracle there, but you've already looked with Top, so that's, know you've not got a Miracle,
Yeah.
or else you've cast it, so I'm not sure about that.
And James has scoop there, so John Ingham goes 1-0 up, and we are going to move on to game 2.